Shalom everyone, good evening, welcome to another class of Torah Comes to Life. This week we are getting very close to Purim, and this upcoming Shabbat is a special Shabbat. It's the Shabbat before Purim, and in the Shabbat before Purim we add to the weekly Parsha, the weekly portion, we add a small portion that we read that has to do with remembering what Amalek did to us on the way, on our journey from Egypt to the wilderness. We were attacked by Amalek just before we arrived at Mount Sinai. The one stop before Mount Sinai was called Refidim, and that's where Amalek attacks us. Amalek always comes just before we get to our destination. It's a kind of cosmic energy that wants to make sure we don't really advance in life. So just before we reach Mount Sinai, we are attacked by Amalek. Just before we return to our land following the Babylonian exile, we are once again attacked by Amalek. This is the story of Purim. And also, as we are about to return in modern history to the land of Israel, in the middle of the 20th century, we had another reincarnation of Amalek in the form of Nazi Germany and the persecution, the very self-consciously Amalek-like Nazi persecution and genocide. And in a way, maybe even the rising wave of anti-Semitism today is yet another wave of the same energy of Amalek that is trying to prevent us from reaching the final redemption. Amalek always attacks before we are ready to advance and grow and evolve. It's the same also in the individual level, in our own personal lives. Whenever we are about to make a very important decision, whether it's getting married or beginning our mission, our new mission in life, our new shlichut, then the seed of Amalek is sown in our own hearts and begins to confuse us. Now, Amalek, of course, as a nation doesn't exist anymore. Even when I was referring to anti-Semitism today, it's more of in the way of Amalek, it's by way of Amalek. Amalek as a nation doesn't exist, and therefore the commandment to destroy Amalek, to vanquish Amalek, to erase it from the face of the earth, no longer applies in the literal sense. But now we are confronted with Amalek in a more spiritual sense. And here there have been given over the years several explanations as to what Amalek is. But the most well-known one, which is based on a very simple Gematria, which is attributed to the Baal Shem Tov, sometimes to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, is that the word Amalek in Hebrew, if you do the Gematria, the numerical value, it equals Safek. Safek means doubt. Now, doubt isn't necessarily a bad thing. It depends what kind of doubt. And in this case, in the case of Amalek, that we're talking about something very, very destructive, we are talking about a form of radical doubt which basically wants to leave you forever empty-handed. Why? Because it's looking for absolute certainty. And because we never have absolute certainty about almost anything in the world, then the kind of radical doubt that demands it is really a destructive force, a self-destructive force. If you want to get married and this voice comes up and tells you, are you absolutely 100% sure this is the right person? This is not a productive voice because you can't be 100% certain. It's always a leap of faith. And when that voice comes along, it's really trying to make sure you don't get married ever. If you want to find a new job or find a new place to live or a new place to do or make a really important life-changing decision, and that voice will come and tell you, are you absolutely sure? Do you know? Don't you have any doubts? Maybe there's some doubt. There's always room for doubt. Therefore, this kind of radical doubt is a self-destructive force. This is what Amalek represents. This isn't just a sort of Gematria wordplay that the numerical value of the words Safek, doubt, and Amalek are the same, right? It's 240. It's actually rooted in the verses themselves. Amalek attacks us. The verse that says that Amalek came and attacked us follows another verse. And the verse that comes just before it says that we were wondering, we were confused as to whether God is among us or not, whether God is in our midst or not. This happens following the story of having no water, and then the Israelites were one questioning whether God is with them and is going to give them water. And of course, the miracle was that there was a rock, and Moshe was able to strike the rock, and the rock produced water. And so there was a solution. But for a while, for a moment, they were wondering, they had doubt whether God is among them, within them, in their midst or not. And as that verse appears, the very next verse is, Amalek came and attacked them. So if you put them together, one next to the other, it's very clear that Amalek was able to sort of filter into their hearts because they had doubt. It sort of was able to put a wedge there, because there was a little bit of like a gap, like a little crack in their hearts. And he was able to put the wedge in there and widen that crack, widen that room for doubt that they had in their hearts. Another beautiful idea that goes along with this is that the word Amalek, now it's not Gematria, it's actually looking at the word itself, the Hebrew word, there's a verb there. Amalek, the central word, the central letters, consonants are the last three. Malak, and malak is a verb in Hebrew. Malak means to behead. And therefore the idea is that Amalek spiritually beheads us. What I mean by beheading us? It severs the intellect or the mind from the body. What does radical doubt do? Radical doubt makes sure that you're walking in endless circles within your own mind, and your decisions never filter down into your heart and your body and your arms and your legs and into actual experience, actual lived experience. You're just thinking and debating and going over all the options that you have in your head. And in a way, what Amalek does is it tells you there's always another way to look at it, another perspective. There's always another, like I said, there's some doubt. And then it's basically what it does is it severs your head, your intellect, your thoughts from your body, which is both your emotions and your action. This is beautifully hinted at or alluded to in a verse that appears in the little paragraph that we're going to read on Shabbat. It has to do with remembering Amalek. It says there that sort of the hand of Amalek covers God's name, and then only the first two letters of God's name appear in this verse when you read it in the Hebrew. The Hebrew verse is Ki Yad Al Kesya. There is a hand on the throne of God, but the name of God only has the first two letters. Kabbalistically, what this means is that the four-letter name of God corresponds to our own being in such a way that the first two letters correspond to the head and the last two letters correspond to the body. So when only the first two letters are mentioned, it's as if an illustration of Amalek only preserving the first two letters. It's only the head, but the body, the last two letters have been erased. So that's another beautiful allusion to this whole idea. Yet another connection to the another sort of element that strengthens this idea that Amalek is about doubt is that Amalek is associated with Purim and Adar. As Adar comes in, we say that once Adar comes in, the month of Adar that we are now in, it's time to increase in joy, and Purim is, of course, the most joyful holiday, the most joyful festival. And there's a famous saying by the rabbis, a rabbinical saying, which is that the greatest joy in the world is when we overcome doubts, when we are able to undo the doubts that confuse us. En simcha kehatarat hasfekot. When we get rid of haunting, plaguing doubts in our mind, that's the most joyful thing there is. Once you have an answer to a question, you've been looking for the answer. Usually it's a practical answer. You're confused as about a choice you need to make in life. Once it becomes clear what the path is, there's nothing more joyful than that, because the plaguing doubts that have been driving you crazy are away. All of a sudden it's very clear. This is the way to go. So this is yet another connection. We have this rabbinical saying, nothing is more joyful than overcoming doubt. And if Amalek is doubt, it makes sense that Amalek would be associated with the most joyful holiday, which is Purim, right? If all these little elements are put together, there's a lot of sort of signs pointing at this idea that Amalek is all about doubt. Now, there is something paradoxical about this whole Amalek story. On the one hand, we are told that this is like the ultimate evil nation. It's the epitome of anti-Semitism. It wants to destroy us. And the only way to vanquish this evil nation is to destroy it. It's one of the most frightening or for some people off-putting commandments in the Torah, that there was this nation that we were told that we need to totally destroy that nation, annihilate it. And of course, the reason is that it's an it's either us or them situation. It's this pure evil nation that God created, this energy in the world that we need to totally destroy it. But on the other hand, it's not so simple. It's more paradoxical than that. Why? Because we are told that we need to erase the memory, the trace of Amalek. And on the other hand, we're told we need to always remember it. Always remember what it did to us. Always remember Amalek. We need to forget it and remember it at the same time. Another thing that is added to this paradox is a rabbinical saying that the descendants of Haman converted to Judaism and became great Torah scholars in Bnei Brak. It says so in the Talmud. That Haman, although we are told that Haman and 10 of his sons were all hanged in the story of the Scroll of Esther, but somehow, in some miraculous way, there was maybe a surviving descendant. We are told that the sons of his sons, his descendants, became these great rabbis. Meaning there is some way to rectify Amalek. Although we are accustomed to seeing Amalek as this ultimate evil, it's not so simple. Really, there is a rectification. Yet another very, very beautiful story that is maybe the deepest allusion to the idea that Amalek is to be rectified, not just annihilated or erased. We need to somehow raise up and elevate what he symbolizes, is the story of how he was born, how he came into being. It turns out this was in a way our own fault, the fault of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the story goes like this. There was a woman in the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob who was called Timnah. And Timnah desperately wanted to convert to Judaism. She had this very deep admiration to the Jews, to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and she felt that this was the chosen family, lineage, and she was a very important woman in her own society, but she was willing to let go of everything and convert. She came to Abraham, asked to convert and marry him. He pushed her away. She came to Isaac, wanting to convert so that he would marry her. He pushed her away. She went to Jacob and asked to be converted and that he would marry her, and he pushed her away. And the rabbis telling this story are rebuking the patriarchs for this. They're saying you should have accepted her. She was very candid. Why did they push her away? Apparently she came from there was something very negative about her world maybe. They didn't feel that it was a true conversion, but they were wrong about this. Now what she did was she said, I still have to be as close as I possibly can to this nation. And because she was pushed away by all three patriarchs, she went to a person called Eliphaz, who was one of the sons of Esau. Esau was the brother of Jacob, son of Isaac, grandson of Abraham, not part of the lineage, just like Ishmael was pushed away. Esau was pushed away because they were not part of the true evolution or lineage or the formulation of this nation called the Jewish nation. But the closest she could get is to marry one of the sons of Esau, Eliphaz. And who was born of this? Amalek. Amalek is not a distant nation. Amalek is not an Egyptian, it's not a Canaanite. It is a great-grandchild of Abraham and Isaac. Right? We have basically 5 generations. It goes Abraham, Isaac, and then Esau and Eliphaz and Amalek. Amalek is a descendant of Abraham and Isaac. It's not a very distant relative. And the idea is that had one of the patriarchs converted Timna, Amalek would not have been born. It was in a way like not a punishment, but a result, a repercussion, a direct result of us pushing away this very righteous Gentile who wanted candidly to convert. But in a deeper way, we can say, no, it's even deeper than that. Had they converted her, Amalek would have been born a Jew. Right? We can say he would never have been born. We can also say he would have been born a Jew. He would have been born part of this holy nation and not pushed away. And because he wasn't, he in a way took the spite of his own mother. He sort of inherited the deep-rooted spite that she in a way resented not being accepted into the nation. And he took that and magnified it and turned it into this lifelong mission to destroy the Jewish people. And it became this Amalekite anti-Semitism. So once we have this story, this is the clearest hint that Amalek is not purely evil. Amalek carries this resentment, this grudge against the Jewish people for not being accepted. And because he wasn't accepted, he translates this frustration into hate, into hatred. Now, I mentioned the 5 names of the 5 generations. Right? We have Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Esau, and then Eliphaz, and then Amalek. 2 of these, the first 2, are part of the Jewish lineage, and the final 3 are outside of the Jewish lineage, right? Now we have 2 very, very beautiful Gematrias. All this is coming from a beautiful class by my teacher, Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg. This is based on an essay that first a class that he taught, which became an essay in a Hebrew book on Purim called Purim Lanu. And this whole class is based on that essay. So he brings 2 very beautiful Gematrias, numerical values, that like many, many Gematrias, awaited millennia for Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg to finally discover them, because once you discover them, you feel like, oh my God, we should have known this forever, and once we know it, we can't unsee it. It's clearly part of the whole story. And Gematrias are very essential to Purim, because the most famous saying in the Talmud about the commandment of Purim to drink, to be lightly intoxicated or sweetened by alcohol. We're not supposed to be drunk, but we are supposed to drink. Michayev inish livsume befurio. One is obligated to drink and be intoxicated in Purim. It says until one is not able to tell Arur Haman, accursed is Haman, from Baruch Mordechai, blessed is Mordechai. And it turns out, unbelievably, that Baruch Mordechai and Arur Haman, these 2 phrases, blessed is Mordechai, cursed is Haman, have the same Gematria. And this was clearly known to the rabbis, and they said it, they put it there. And this is, in a way, a clue that this whole Gematria thing of playing with words and with letters and numbers, words and numbers, and finding the hidden interconnections, it's very vital to the whole Purim story. So now we have 2 Gematrias that have been discovered in this generation. And it goes like this. If we take the final 3 names, the 3 names that are coming out of the Jewish people, right? Esau, that was pushed away, his son Eliphaz, who married Timnah, and their son Amalek, who is, of course, our sworn enemy. If we take these 3 names, Esau, Eliphaz, Amalek, we put them together, we get the numerical value of Avraham, Avraham, Avraham. Meaning, the mean, I don't know how you say it in English, the arithmetical mean, like if you take 3 numbers together and then you put them together, then you divide them by 3, you get the average. So the average is Avraham, meaning they are still connected to Avraham. Avraham is the originator of the monotheistic faith, and he is the ultimate believer, the first believer. And it turns out that the final 3 that appear to be rejected, appear to be outside of the holy lineage, still carry within themselves this baggage and the DNA, the spiritual DNA, or the residue, the stamp of their grandfather Abraham. They're not totally outside. But this is where it becomes even more interesting. If we now go to the full 5 names, right? We're starting with Amalek, which is the 5th generation, and he's very wicked and he hates us, and he is the embodiment of this radical doubt, which is this destructive force. But we go back 4 generations, we get to Abraham, right? So we're taking all 5 names now. Abraham, Isaac, Esau, Eliphaz, Amalek. We put them all together and we divide it by 5. Again, looking for the average, they all 5 equal Amalek, or Safek, doubt. So first we looked at the final 3, which appear to be outsiders, and it turns out they're connected to Avraham. Now we get something even more mysterious. All 5 are connected to Amalek, even Avraham, even Abraham. Abraham, Isaac, Esau, Eliphaz, Amalek equals Amalek, 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 or Safek, 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 right? 5 doubts. Now, why is this very interesting? Because there is a Kabbalistic concept of 5 doubts. We have this very idea that there are 5 cosmic, theological, deeply embedded doubts in the world. 5, not 6, not 4, Chamisha Sfikot. So the Safek, the fact that we have 5 times Safek, which is 5 times Amalek, which we get by connecting Abraham, the founder of faith, and Amalek, his great-grandchild, who is the embodiment of doubt, right? Faith and doubt are opposites. If we put them all together, we get 5 doubts. It's all doubtful. There's even a doubt in Abraham. So the stamp of Abraham is present in Amalek in some way, but also the doubt of Amalek is present in Abraham in some way. What are the 5 doubts? What does it mean? So these concepts, the concept of the 5 doubts appears in the Kabbalah of the Ari, Rabbi Isaac Luria. And just like everything in his Kabbalistic writings, it's very complicated, it's very structural, sometimes mathematical. So we're not going to go into the way he explains it. We're going to explain it in a Hasidic way. But we are going to say the most important thing about these 5 doubts, which is that where are they located? If you look at the whole model of the Sefirot, the Kabbalistic sort of map of the universe, which in Chassidut has become the map of the soul, and we look at the uppermost Sefirah, the first Sefirah, which is the Sefirah of crown, Keter, which embodies the superconscious soul, the superconscious level of the soul within our own psyches. The topmost level of the topmost Sephirah is called the unknowable head. It's the most profound and subtle level within the soul, and it houses the faculty of faith. Faith is, in a way, the deepest and highest level within each and every one of us. When someone is claiming to be an atheist or an agnostic, they're simply disconnected from the root of their own soul. The root of their own soul is connected to God, whether they accept it or they don't, or they realize it or they don't. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right language or the right teacher or going through the right experience. And when someone opens up to faith, it's not like something was added to them. It was like they discovered that their soul was always had this, was always new in some way or connected in some way to God, but it was just buried in some way and they had to uncover it. So the topmost level of the topmost Sefirah is called the unknowable head, and it houses this faculty, the most superconscious part of our own soul, which is called faith. And right there, surrounding this faith, sort of crowning it or enriching it, are the 5 doubts, which is unbelievable. Which the Ari would say this, because the Ari, like many of the writings of Kabbalah, he appears to be giving us very absolutely verified or true facts about the hidden worlds and the hidden levels of the world. And they don't talk much about doubt in Kabbalah. But here the Ari comes and says, Emunah, faith, is surrounded by 5 doubts. And it's like the entourage of faith. The faith is like this queen, and it walks around with these 5 sort of girls that are accompanying it, right? And they're walking with it all the time, like the handmaidens, right? That accompany this important woman. And they are 5 doubts. Faith goes along with doubt. Faith is not absolute knowledge. Faith is something that is inherently open for doubt, for more than one doubt. And it's in some incredible, beautiful, deep way, they go together. If you believe in something, it goes without saying. It's sort of built into the story of faith that you're going to have doubts there. And they go together. So now we understand why Avraham, the father of faith, the progenitor of faith, the first monotheist, if we go 4 generations down, we get to Amalek, the very opposite, the radical doubt, which doesn't want you to believe in anything. It wants you to remain an agnostic forever, which an agnostic really is emotionally an atheist. Well, maybe intellectually they're an agnostic, because they're saying, I don't know, who knows, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But because it remains in this question mark phase, then emotionally they're identical to atheists. And that's exactly the purpose of Amalek. But it turns out that's because there was this severing somewhere, this disconnect between Abraham and Amalek. And now we pushed away his mother, and that's too late. It was done already. It's a done fact. But now we have to convert Amalek himself. And if we convert Amalek himself, then the 5 generations, and of course it's also rectifying Esau and Eliphaz, right? It's 3 generations we need to rectify. There's something about the 5 generations, they can become the 5 doubts, but in a good way, in a positive way. So now we want to basically explore the 5 generations, and through the 5 generations find out what kind of doubt each one signifies, how that doubt can appear in a negative way, and how the same doubt can appear in a positive and constructive way within our own soul. But before that, one final block to the sort of this building that I'm constructing here, that will help us sort of decode the whole 5 generations and what they stand for. We can ask in the most psychological, existential way, what does it mean, the negative doubt and the positive doubt, before going into the 5 variations of it. Basically what it says. And here we can be reminded of a very famous saying by a very, very famous French philosopher, whose name was René Descartes. And when you study philosophy, and you study modern philosophy, right, post-Middle Ages, it invariably starts with Descartes. Why? Because Descartes is known as the father of skepticism, right? The doubtful, right? Being doubtful. And he was in a way, he was like the watershed moment of the new philosophy coming into being post the very theological kind of Middle Ages, is that he started not by saying, I believe in scripture, I believe in God, I believe in the dogmas, I believe in whatever. He said, I want to start with the opposite. I want to doubt everything. I want to doubt, maybe the world doesn't exist, maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe my own memories are false, because sometimes they can be mistaken. And he's trying to doubt everything in the world. Until finally, he reaches something he cannot doubt, which is his own existence. And then he says is called the famous cogito, which in Latin is cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. He was an intellectual, so he used the verb think. Really what he meant was, I feel, I experience, I am the subject that thinks all thoughts, and the existence of this I cannot doubt, because the very doubt is part of this thought. So cogito, I think, ergo, therefore, sum, I am. And basically what he said is, the only thing I can be absolutely sure of is myself. The rest is doubtful. The rest is doubted. This is, by the way, the classic thoughts of a bachelor. Why? Because had he been married, he was never married. He was a lifelong bachelor, literally. His wife would have slapped him in the face and told him, hello, I'm also here, I also exist, right? And it's I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. It's the kind of solipsistic thoughts of someone who is in their own sort of loop. And they're so disconnected from other people, they can doubt their own existence. In a way, there's something more. I'm not saying it's completely a false way of thinking, but the going so deeply with this direction is something that is very much a monologous kind of thinking versus a dialogous kind of thinking, right? If dialogue for you is the foundation, then there's always two people. But if you're in this solipsistic mindset, it's all about you. So anyway, the point of this is that in a very deep way, and I'm not talking really, I use the philosopher, but I want to talk about psychology. In the psychological realm, the Amalek form of doubt is that I am the certainty, my ego is the center of gravity, that's certain, that's absolute. That's a form of narcissism. And everything else is doubtful, in the sense that I'm not sure I need anything else. I'm not sure I need another person. I'm not sure I need God. I'm not sure I need the world. I am the absolute, and everything else is relative or doubtful, and I'm really the only thing that matters. This is the negative form of doubt. I am certain, but I doubt everything else. The positive form of doubt reverses this, and I'm starting to doubt my own self, or doubt my own self-sufficiency. Doubting my own self-sufficiency is saying I am incomplete, and I am not self-sufficient, and I don't know everything, and I'm not the center of everything. I am the half of something which I don't know exactly what it is, but I need to be completed by something else. I said that next Shabbos we're going to read the little portion that's added, which is the Chol, remember what Amalek did to you. There was another special addition with an ADD, that we added to the parashot last Shabbos, which is, the Shabbat was called Shabbat Shkalim. Shkalim has to do with the fact that before the building of the tabernacle each year for the temple, each Jew would contribute half a shekel. And that's how the Jewish people were counted, because there was a prohibition against doing a census. I think that's not the word, census, that you count all the people. This was forbidden because there's something about the souls of the Jews. You're not supposed to count them, but you need to count them. So what do? Each one contributes half a shekel, then you count the half shekalim. You count the coins. But the deeper idea here is that every Jew was embodied in a coin which was worth half a shekel. And we are just now between these two readings, the reading about the collection of the halves of the shkalim and remembering Amalek. And in a way, there's a very profound connection. Amalek feels whole, but the point of Israel, the essence of Israel, is to feel like a half, not like a whole. Each Jew was embodied in giving half a shekel, meaning we experience ourselves as the half of something else. The half of God, the half of our spouse, the half of the other Jew, the half of the whole family of humanity. It's half of something. Why? Because we doubt our own selves, right? So it's a very we're abstracting the whole concept here, right? We're taking the concept of doubt into what you doubt becomes the half of something, because you doubt it. You're not sure it's full, it's whole. And what's certain is the wholeness. Amalek is absolutely certain that he is whole, and that the other persons or entities in the world are like a half. And the rectified version of the doubt is to feel that I am the half. So, having said all this, we now want to go over the 5 generations and see how each one of them experienced a form of halfness, which can be used in a negative way, but also in a good way. And if we're able to take the 5 generations and live the 5 halves in the proper way, then that is the rectification of Amalek on all 5 levels. And we have the 5 positive doubts, vanquishing the 5 negative doubts. Okay, so to begin, we are going to Abraham. Abraham felt that he was the half of something greater, and the completion for that half was God. Abraham epitomizes searching for God, feeling that your life is incomplete without a divine presence. This is the first step. Abraham grew up in an idolatrous world. There was a lot of pagan idols and statues, and it wasn't enough for him. He felt that these are all like mirrors of humanity. What is the world of idolatry? You look at polytheistic religions, and they have all these plethora of gods, and they're all just mirrors of human emotions. There's a god of anger, there's a god of love, there's a god of sadness, there's a god of joy, and there's a god for different energies or different life forces or meteorological phenomena, but it's all just reflections of moods in the human psyche. Abraham felt that this is, again, circling around our own selves. And he felt that there's something above the sun and above the moon, and there has to be someone behind everything, and that's totally transcendent, totally outside the sphere of human consciousness and knowledge. This is the first halfness. The first halfness is me vis-a-vis God. I am the half, and God is my other half. So Abraham embodied this level, which is the most foundational, the deepest, and the first one is that I'm incomplete without God. So I need God to complete me. So this is the first stage. Now we're moving to the next generation. Next generation is his son Yitzchak, Isaac. Isaac was very different from Abraham. In the time of Isaac, there was, one of the stories is that there was hunger. There wasn't food in the land of Israel, the land of Canaan as it was then called. And when his father Abraham faced this, he went to Egypt to search for food. Later on, when the same thing happens in the generation of Jacob, Jacob does the same. There's no food, he goes to Egypt for food. Isaac is in the middle, he wants to do the same thing. So he's about to go to Egypt. All of a sudden God appears to him and tells him, no, you are not to leave the land forever. Whatever you need, you'll find inside your land. And what he does is he starts digging wells. He doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't go to another country. He's going inside. He's looking inside. And he's digging wells. And then finally, it takes some time and a struggle. But finally, he finds water and plenty. And he's able to make it. And just like God told him, he never leaves the land. So, translating this to our own experience, this is like saying the other half that you're looking for, now that you have God already, because Abraham, we have that already. What completes you is inside you. What completes you, your other half, is a more profound self than the one you know. What is this image of digging a well? Digging a well is saying, the surface is not enough for me. I want to go deeper, and I'm going to discover something that is hidden beneath the surface. Basically, Isaac is about realizing that my superficial self, in the language of Chassidut is called the animal soul, is insufficient. It's the half of something bigger. What completes me? My higher self, or in the language of Chassidut, my divine soul. But for that, I need to not look towards the outside. I need to look towards the inside, just like Isaac remained in his own country, started digging. So the second doubt, right? The first doubt, Abraham, the first doubt is maybe humanity is not self-sufficient. Maybe humanity needs to look for God, to seek God, and then you can find God. The second doubt is maybe my own self, my familiar self, that I know, that I love, is not my full being, not my highest form of self-actualization. And I need to go deeper. It's a struggle, just like Isaac struggled to finally dig the final well. There was a few wells, and each one was a struggle, but finally he was able to dig a well that no one was interrupting, and then he was able to flourish. And this means digging more and more into yourself until you find your higher divine self, and that completes you and guides you, and you're no longer attached to your very, very childish self-image of just being the end result of whatever it is that happened in your life and in your biography, and your habits of thought, and your hobbies, and whatever it is that you associate with yourself. You go past that and you discover that you have a divine soul. So this becomes the second existential feeling of halfness that we overcome or that we complement this by discovering our higher self. Now we get to the third generation. Now the third generation is Esau. But Esau now becomes the negative version of it. So we need to look first, in order to understand the positive version, we need to look for Jacob, his twin brother. Yaakov left the country. He did leave the land and started facing the world. He went outside to the big wide world that's outside of his shell, outside of the little bubble that he grew up in. And then he had a lot of fantasies, a lot of dreams. He was a dreamer. He met this beautiful girl by the well, and her name was Rachel, and he was love at first sight. And he was absolutely sure he's going to marry her. He knew that it was going to take 7 years, but he was sure throughout the 7 years that once they're over, he's going to marry his one beloved, which is Rachel, and no one else is going to interfere. And he was totally in love with this fantasy. And the 7 years passed very quickly, very easily. But when they ended and the marriage took place, he woke up in the morning and realized his fantasy is just a fantasy, and he was married forcefully and coerced into marrying her older sister, Leah. He was then allowed to marry Rachel also, in the exchange of working 7 more years. So his dream was fulfilled, but not in the way he was hoping. He was hoping to be married just to Rachel. He wanted to be, just the two of them forever. But life turned out to be surprising, and he had to marry also Leah. What is the deeper? And then it took him years to realize this was all for the best. 7 out of his 13 children, Leah bore to him. And from these children came the kingly lineage, which is Judah, and the priestly lineage, which is Levi. And so the majority of his children came from her. And in a way, she was crucial in connecting him also to his own higher self, which is called Israel. And finally, ultimately, who's buried with him in the cave of the patriarchs in Hebron? It's not Rachel, it's Leah. Leah, in a way, is the higher spouse. But he was love at second sight, not love at first sight. It took him a long time to realize that it was meant to be. What is the lesson here? The lesson here is that if we think that our own fantasies and ideals and wishes are full and perfect, we are in for a big reveal, a big shock. The shock is that life, the world, will take us in other directions, in other ways, and it's not going to be what we thought, what we imagined, what we hoped for. It's going to be quite a shock to wake up and find all these Leahs in our lives. The word Leah includes the word lo, which is no. It's like the world saying no, it's not what you thought, it's not what you expected, it's something else. And now you have to live with that no that you woke up with one morning. It's not going anywhere. But it turns out that all these no's are really very deep yeses. Because Leah is an amazing woman, and she was totally meant to be his wife. And the Jewish people would not have been what it is without Leah. And so all these apparent obstacles and bumps and roadblocks are really blessings in disguise. What completes me here? It's reality. It's the world. It's life. It's divine providence. If I think that me and my own plans are self-sufficient and perfect, This is the negative kind of Amalek kind of doubt. This is what Esau was all about. Esau wanted to control the world. He wanted to be in charge and control. Jacob was an innocent man, a dweller of tents. That's how Jacob is described. He had this innocence, this wholehearted, simple faith. That's what he was able to remain married to Leah, because he had this tzmimut, this wholehearted faith that it must be for the best. Esau was a man of the field, a man of hunting, a manipulator, a controller. If a no came his way, he would shout no in a louder voice, and he would push it away. He was supposed to marry Leah. That's what the rabbinical stories tell us. They were supposed to marry Leah. He missed, because he said, "It's going to be my way or the highway. It's my way or nothing else." And then by believing that what he wants, that's the ultimate, that's the bottom line of everything, you miss out on the blessings that come with the things that don't go your way. Esau was not able to be completed, was not open to be completed by the world, by destiny, by divine providence. And he missed out on a lot of things. Jacob was tam, ish tam yoshev ohalim, a man of wholeness, of sincerity, of simple faith. And so he was able to realize that these are blessings in disguise. So the third form of halfness is that me and my fantasies and my desires are only the half of a bigger story, and that story will be completed via God and my higher self working together to put obstacles in my way, which I will then discover are really blessings. So I am the half, and the other half is what's life going to throw my way. So Jacob is the good version of this. Esau is the negative version. This is now when it's starting to veer away from the right path, because Esau is saying, no, I don't accept. I don't accept no for an answer. I don't accept the world or God or anyone else to give me no, and therefore he doesn't connect to his own higher self and to his own destiny, his own calling, and he pushes away Leah, and Jacob does marry her. Now we're moving on to the fourth generation. Fourth generation is in a way the hardest because we don't know anything about Eliphaz. Eliphaz, the son of Esau, hardly anything is said about him. But we do have two clues. The first clue is that we can correspond Eliphaz to the generation that corresponds to him coming from Jacob. The next generation after Jacob were Jacob and Esau. So now that the son of Esau is Eliphaz, who are the sons of Jacob? It's Joseph and his brothers. So now we can understand what the halfness that we're talking about in this generation is. It's me and my siblings. It's me and other people. The whole story of Joseph and his brothers is that the brothers pushed away Joseph. They hated Joseph. They tried to kill him. They sold him. And they basically shunned the other. It was the other human being. It wasn't Hashem, God. It wasn't their higher self. It wasn't the world. It was their brother. Their brother, the other person, the other Jew, was someone that they said, we don't want you in our lives. And they turned him into an other and they pushed him away. But the story ends that he was able to forgive them and recreate the sibling relationship, the fraternity, and forgive them and love them, and they saw his true face, and he saw their own true face, and there was this beautiful resolution of me and the other, me and my brother, me and the other person. Eliphaz, that's the first clue. A second clue is that although we know very little about Eliphaz, there is another Eliphaz in the Bible. Who is the other Eliphaz in the Bible? We have to go all the way to the story of Job. Job is tormented by God because he's being tested. It's a trial. And he loses his family and he loses his belongings, and then finally he loses his own health and his suffering, the sufferings of Job. And then 3 friends come to visit him. And the first one and the primary one is called Eliphaz. And the sages say it cannot be a coincidence. It must be the same Eliphaz. And what do we see in this story? In a way, the opposite of Joseph and his brothers. We see someone who appears to be a friend. He's coming from a long way away to visit his long-lost friend who's now very much suffering. He's coming to console him and to be with him and to try and help him. But when the story advances, what happens is that Eliphaz and the other two try to convince Job. They try to convince Job that he is a sinner, that he must have sinned, because otherwise God wouldn't have punished him. And God only punishes for a reason, and therefore he must soul search until he finds out what he did wrong. But we know he did nothing wrong. And Job knows also that he didn't do anything wrong. This is a far more mysterious event that's going on here. That's the whole point of the story of Job, is that not everything makes sense. Sometimes you can be righteous and suffer, and the answer you'll get maybe in the world to come, but you can't get the answer in this life. That's the whole point of Job, is that God finally comes into the picture and just has this long list of questions. Where were you when I created the world? How do you expect to understand everything? What do you think that the world revolves around you? Some things are inexplicable, are mysterious. God moves in mysterious ways. But the three friends, led by Eliphaz, are very critical of Job. Eliphaz is not a true friend. He appears to be a good friend, but he doesn't really see Job. He doesn't really listen to Job. He continuously insists that Job must be mistaken, must be lying to himself or to them, and he's not admitting that he sinned in some way. And the story ends with God being very angry at Eliphaz and the others. That's how we know Eliphaz is the main one. Because at the very end of the book, it says that God is angry at Eliphaz and the other friends. Only Eliphaz is mentioned by name now. There were three of them, and then the fourth one also came along. But when the reckoning comes in the end, God is angry at Eliphaz and the others. So we know Eliphaz was the main one. So he led the whole group. He came as a friend, but he wasn't a real friend. He didn't really see the other person. He didn't really see Job. He was only seeing his own mindset, his own worldview. He wasn't listening. And had he listened, he would have believed Job. He would have said, I understand you. This is inexplicable. And then he would have just been empathetic. He would have just been there for him. He wouldn't have tried to rebuke him and to educate him and to teach him and to teach him a lesson and all this. So the fourth half is that I'm incomplete without the other person, without my brothers, without my spouse, without my friends, with other fellow human beings, right? So I need completion from Hashem. I need completion from my own higher self. I need completion from the world and what's going on in the world. I need completion from other people. And now we get to the final and fifth generation. This is now Amalek himself, not some other name that mathematically they all add up to 5 Amaleks or 5 Safeks. This is now the pure form of Amalek, the pure form of doubt. But we also need, once again, to correspond that to the equivalent generation in the Jewish people. Right? We had Abraham and then Isaac, then we had Jacob and Esau, then we had Eliphaz and Joseph and his brothers. Now we have Amalek. Who does Amalek attack? The Jewish people as a nation coming out of Egypt. Now it's not a particular individual. In a way we could say Moshe. But it's not just Moshe. It's the whole Jewish people enslaved in Egypt and breaking out. And this is the deepest form of halfness. The way it's explained by Rav Ginsburg in this essay that I'm teaching. He says the final form of halfness is a halfness that is never completed. This has to do with the existential loneliness of being in the world, and what do you do with it? The positive version of the existential loneliness is that you convert it into what is called in Chassidut the broken heart, which is the best vessel in the world. That's what the Kotzker Rebbe said, that the most perfect vessel, the most perfect state is a broken heart. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. said the Kotzker Rebbe. And it's inherently and always broken, because it knows that it will never achieve God's infinite nature and God's infinite wisdom and God's infinite light. It translates the existential loneliness into a constant yearning for something that will never arrive. And it keeps you going and going and going. It's the halfness that is never fulfilled. Because now you're the half of God's infinite light. So there's never a resolution there. This is coming full circle with Abraham. Abraham also was longing for God, but he found God to a certain degree. God told him, go and be blessed, and gave him purpose and meaning and fulfillment. But now when we get to the fifth level, it's realizing that it doesn't end with that. It's a constant yearning, it's a constant journey. And so the positive version of the fifth half is that the existential loneliness becomes the broken heart that yearns forever to reach God, but of course it's never fulfilled. What is the negative version of this? The Amalekite, the pure Amalek, the fifth generation, which is Amalek himself. This is taking the existential loneliness into self-pity and into seeing yourself as an ultimate victim and allowing yourself to be the worst of the worst ultimately, because you feel that you are the tragic figure of a tragic world. And because you're saying, if I will never ever be truly fulfilled, I will never find out the answers, the divine answers to everything, because there's something inherently infinite about God, and something inherently finite about this world, and something inherently lonely about my own being. I become the tragic figure that is surrounded by his own tragic aura and saying to himself, there's no hope, there's no meaning in the world, and I might as well just be, ultimately, you justify to yourself all the worst things in the world if you go down this lane. If you go with this feeling that this existential loneliness and brokenness of the world is irreparable, and it is irreparable in some way, even when Mashiach comes, God will remain this infinite being that we constantly yearn for. Because there's always going to be this a little bit of a disparity, or an infinite amount of disparity between our own finite being and God's infinite being. This is the half that is never fulfilled. It's constantly moving and yearning. But if you don't know how to do this, you become this bitter, enraged, self-pitying Amalekite, which then wants to hurt everyone else. Especially those people who are saying that what you do with this brokenness of the world is you turn it into a broken heart, and that's the most whole thing there is, and you go with it towards the heaven. Then these people become the most hated for you, because they show you what you're supposed to be doing with your own brokenness. Not to feel sorry for yourself, not to hate the world, not to pity your own self, not to feel like some self-righteous victim. It's telling you that you need to pick yourself up and start moving and helping some other broken hearts. And together we're all going to move and never reach the divine destination. And the person telling you this, that's the Israelites that cried from Egypt. Egypt is the constraints of this world. And in Egypt, they experienced the full brokenness of the world. And then they shouted to Hashem, and Hashem took them out. And they started on the journey, the never-ending journey, which is still going on. But he saw them coming out of their own misery, of their own bondage, their own enslavement, picking themselves up, doing something with their lives. And so he was ever more bitter and angry and jealous and hateful and tried to destroy them. And I think we see this today in today's anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism today is driven by a lot of people who are ultimately extremely jealous of the fact that the Jewish people suffered unbelievable hardships and persecution, but didn't feel sorry for themselves and didn't wallow in self-pity. Well, a little bit, But not just that. The Jewish people also picked itself up and is starting to build a life for itself. And in a way, this is extremely annoying because people want to be, they want their own self-pity to be validated by others. And when they see someone who's not wallowing in self-pity, but making something of their lives, and they're not willing to do the same, then they would hate this other person. They would hate them for choosing life. Whereas they themselves choose death, or choose destruction, or choose self-pity, or choose hatred. So this is the final and fifth halfness. The halfness of the broken heart that is never fulfilled. And that is the most profound level, but it has to do with this constant yearning. And Amalek is the opposite of that. So this turned out to be a longer class than I thought a little bit. But what we looked at basically today is we wanted to explore the notion of Amalek as Safek, which is doubt. And then look at the fact that we have 5 generations leading from the champion of faith, Abraham, to the embodiment of doubt, which is Amalek. And it turned out that they're all doubts. It's 5 doubts. And this connected to the Kabbalistic concept of the 5 doubts that go along with faith, that are very holy doubts. And then it turns out you can elevate all these doubts. And then, as we saw, the first is to doubt your own self-sufficiency or mankind's self-sufficiency, and then you open up to God. And in the second one, you doubt your own self-image, and you connect to your higher self, your own soul. And in the third one, you doubt your own perception, perspective, vision, plan, and then you open up to God changing your plans and having better plans for you. But you need to open up for that and realize that you're not self-sufficient. The story you laid out for yourself is not sufficient. That was the third one. And then the fourth one is realizing you need other people. They complement you. They add perspectives that you don't have. And the fifth one has to do with having this very basic incompletion, the existential incompleteness, which is that will never be fulfilled. That you need to get up and go into the unknown, into the fog, as Moshe stepped into the mist, into the fog in order to receive the Torah. There's something inherently unknowable about God, unknowable about the nature of the world, and that's the way it is. And we all have to go into that fog, into that doubt, and embrace the 5 doubts. Embrace the 5 halves of our nature. And then 4 of them can be completed, and the 5th one remains unfulfilled, but in the best way possible. It keeps us going. And it keeps all the other halves constantly looking for more and more fulfillment from God and our higher self and the world and our spouse and our friends and so on. So this was our this very, very beautiful essay by Rabbi Ginsburg that we now learned, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all merit to be able to really live this and contemplate this and go deeper into this, all these ideas, and truly live them. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for making this episode possible. If you enjoyed it, hitting the like button and subscribing really helps the channel grow. You're also welcome to join our Sunday Zoom program, which includes a live Q&A session. Check out the links below for details, and I'll see you in the next episode.